What is going on, guys? What is going on, 27 Squad? Welcome back into another video, and today we've got some breaking news today. You guys have probably already heard about it. It was announced earlier today, kind of around noon time, but the New York Giants have just announced that they've hired their new GM, and that is Schoen, the assistant GM from the Buffalo Bills. Now, I am extremely excited about this. As you guys know, it came down to 3 candidates for the New York Giants, and that was Schoen from the Buffalo Bills, assistant GM. There was the assistant GM for the 49ers in Adam Peters, and there was also Ryan Poles from the Kansas City Chiefs. All 3 were fantastic candidates, and all 3 were on my list. They were both, all 3 of them were top 3 on my list for candidates for this vacant GM position. Now, the big question is who's going to be head coach. We've got some names we're going to talk about, but first, let's talk about Schoen, I don't know, but a lot of people saying it's Schoen, so we're going to go with that. Schoen, we're bringing in another Joe. What do I expect from Schoen? Listen, he comes from a very, very good background of football. He is a very, very experienced personnel guy in the scouting department, right? He's a very experienced person in the scouting department. He has 20 years in the field, and he's only 42 years old. So that means he started from, when he was younger than me. I'm 24 years old. That means he started when he was 22. If he was in there for 20 years and he's 42 now. I'm not good at math, but there's the answer for that one. That's a really good resume for Schoen. He was with I believe the Carolina Panthers, and that's where he met Brandon Beane, and then he moved to the Miami Dolphins, and then he moved to the Buffalo Bills, and that's where he became assistant GM. And I hear that he's responsible for a lot of the drafting and a lot of the success of the personnel on that Buffalo Bills team. So I'm very excited for him. We shouldn't really have a set expectation yet, other than the fact that we hope that he's better than Dave Gettleman's regime, right? Because obviously he's there to replace Dave Gettleman. So we're gonna hope to see something different in New York. But as far as setting an exact representation of what this team should be is gonna be hard to do, because as you guys know, he was the assistant GM, he was not the GM. Let's just hope that everything that Brandon Beane has instilled in him from when they were together in Carolina about almost 20 years ago, let's hope that everything he's learned, that he's ready to be a GM for the New York Football Giants. So now let's get into potential head coaches. There are news articles going all around about who the potential head coach is going to be under Schoen for the New York Giants, and 3 names are coming up. And obviously Brian Flores is a name that's been going crazy for the Giants right now. We'll get into him and what could happen if he is head coach. And there's also Dan Quinn, who was already the Giants already put in a request to interview him before they announced the GM, and I think Schoen was already already set in stone. He was going to be the guy, just being that you guys know what me and Kush discovered in our podcast. I'll link his video above, but we kind of already knew Schoen was going to be the GM ahead of time, and that's just a young gun thing. You guys just gotta join in the live streams if you guys want to get a little bit of kind of a clarity about what goes on around the New York Giants. You got to join the Young Guns podcast live every Wednesday. That's a quick plug. And the last coach that everybody's talking about a lot is Brian Daboll, for obvious reasons, the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. So we got Quinn, Daboll, and we have Brian Flores. Those are our top 3 candidates right now that the Giants are looking to hire as our next head coach. Now, if Brian Flores gets hired, let's talk about Brian Flores first, because this one's very interesting. With all the things that are being uncovered in Miami about how he's not really much of a front office head coach, he butts heads with his coaching staff, his offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. He doesn't really talk to them. We've seen things that he's had a lot of situations with the front office. Doesn't seem like that he is probably the best option, although he led the Miami Dolphins to 2 winning seasons straight. I don't know yet if we're willing to kind of deal with the headache of a potentially distracting head coach for the sake of, having a winning having a couple winning seasons. I want to make sure we have longevity and no worries with the head coaching position. Everything I'm hearing about Brian Flores, it's one thing that if it's a player that's being a diva, it's one thing if it's, anybody else but the head coach, a coordinator and an offensive line coach, that's different, right? But if it's the head coach, the supposed leader of a football team, whether that be with the players, he's pretty much the voice of the football team. That to me you can't mess that up. So as far as Brian Flores goes, I hope he's not distracted if we do bring him in, and it's a potential re-debut of Patrick Graham as the New York Giants defensive coordinator. As you guys know, Brian Flores had Patrick Graham as his defensive coordinator back in Miami in 2019 when the Giants took him and he came to New York. And, I really love what Patrick Graham has built for the Giants in, 2019, 2020. 2020 and 2021. I really like what Patrick Graham built there, and I really want to build from that. The only thing this team has going for themselves is the defense. I know the defense kind of was a little bit underwhelming this season, kind of underperformed as opposed to in 2020 when the Giants went 6-10. But due to the amount of injuries, of course, we were going to see some sort of regression from the New York Giants defense. And on top of that, the offense really regressed too. And that led to, of course, more 3-and-outs. So the defense was on the field the majority of the time. And also just bad field position that the offense was letting the opposing offense have. And it's forcing the defense to be put in bad situations constantly. So I really like what Patrick Graham was building for the defense. They looked really good, and they had a lot of potential, a lot of young players, and I feel like Patrick Graham should stay in New York, but I feel like the only way that's going to happen is if Brian Flores is hired as head coach, and I guess you could take the pros with the cons with that one. Now, Dan Quinn was the only coach right now that it has been requested for an interview. I know we're hearing a lot of Dable and Flores. I don't know if it was confirmed that they were requested to be interviewed, but I know Dan Quinn was requested before the announcement of Joe Schoen. And Dan Quinn to me is interesting. Let's not just turn our heads to Dan Quinn, okay? Dan Quinn is interesting. Is he my number one option? No, he's in fact my last option, but it's not a bad last option to have. Similarly enough to the GM candidates that we had, I felt like the last GM candidates that we brought in for interviews weren't bad GM candidates. They just weren't anywhere near the other candidates that we had, but they weren't bad. So Dan Quinn is not a bad head coach or a bad coach. He deserves to be in the NFL. Everywhere he's gone, he's found some sort of success. You guys know he really made his name in Seattle, where he was a defensive coordinator for the Legion of Boom. Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, Bobby Wagner, all of these names, he was in charge. He was a defensive coordinator in Seattle at the time, and that's where he found his success, and that's where he eventually was hired by the Atlanta Falcons to be their head coach, and he took them to a Super Bowl. Now, despite of the fact that he is a defensive-minded head coach, and their defense for Atlanta was absolutely lackluster, was absolutely terrible in Atlanta, besides that fact, he still led them to a potential Super Bowl. Of course, Kyle Shanahan left, everything went to shreds, and he was eventually fired. He was eventually hired by the Dallas Cowboys, who had a historically bad defense twice for the second time, and he of course helped them change. Of course, the additions of Micah Parsons and the emergence of Trevon Diggs helps out a lot, but Dan Quinn did a really good job in Dallas for what they did last year and how he changed them this year. And then we look at our last candidate, and that's Brian Dable. This was the most obvious choice to me of the next head coach, offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. I really like the way that offense is constructed, and I really like how they use their players. And besides the fact that they're running game, but that may just be due to their situation. It's not like they've neglected the running game, as they've had a number of running backs go in the past. They just haven't been very successful at running the ball. But strong offensive line, very good receivers, and of course a franchise quarterback. That's something I really want to see in New York. And Brian Dable to me is the most obvious choice for Joe Schoen at head coach. So that being said, the one little nugget I want to leave you guys with before I end this video, it was going on for a little too long now, I'm sorry about that, guys, but the one little nugget I want to leave you guys with is the Ravens defensive coordinator, Don Martindale. A lot of people call him Wink Martindale, who also interviewed for the head coaching position for the Giants back in 2017 when the New York Giants were looking, I think, no, not 2017, I think it was the Joe Judge hiring, so back in 2020 when the New York Giants hired Joe Judge, I believe Wink Martindale was the candidate then, and, you know, he interviewed for the New York Giants, so he may be a face that we see playing a defensive coordinator role for the Giants whenever we get a head coach. But keep in mind for him, he just got released today by the Baltimore Ravens, so we'll see what happens with that one. So that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, guys. What do you guys think about Joe Schoen being our next GM, and where do you think we are going to go with the head coaching position? All that being said, I'm Kid Blue, and I'll see you guys in the next video.